All right, I'm going to be joined here in just 1 second by Dr. Andy Woods and Anni Cyrus. Last week, when we were up on Capitol Hill interviewing members on the House side, right outside the Rotunda area, about, 15 steps, was what they've now labeled the Nancy Pelosi caucus room. And all week long when we were up there, various groups, I guess, can reserve that room and use it. And there was a Jewish group, a large Jewish group, that was using it. In fact, in the pictures you'll see in the video we're about to play, you'll see the name of the Jewish group. And then all of a sudden comes up in there some pro-Palestinian folks wearing their keffiyehs, the terrorist neckerchief, if you will, scarf, holding signs. One of the guys wearing a shirt, "From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free." That to me sounds like genocide. Just get rid of all the Jews. And I'm going to show you the video because I took a video and some pictures. And they had the audacity to come up in there where these Jewish folks were having their meeting, which caused me to be able to meet a few of them, including a rabbi from Beverly Hills. And he knew who Olivier Melnick was. He knew who Dov was, the former New York legislator. And so we're going to have him on soon. But this made some of them nervous. And then all of a sudden, we have a lot of Capitol Police that rightfully showed up to make sure nothing was going to happen. And nothing did. And they had their little say, and then they left. But they were passing out a brochure. And I went and got the brochure. And in fact, I'll show you, if you go to their website of this group, you can see the brochure. I saw it on here. Where'd it go? There it is. This is the brochure they were passing out. This brochure right here. View the brochure. Let's bring it up. We're going to go through this a little bit and talk with Annie and Dr. Woods about this and a few other things. This is even the full brochure. Where's the rest of it, boys? Because I got the full thing here, and this isn't all of it. Well, there's some lies, I think, in here. I want to show you this video. Watch this video, and then we're going to talk to Annie and Dr. Woods about it, including many other things going on. Watch this. So there you go. So they were holding these brochures, so I went and got one. And I've sent a screenshot of it over to Annie and over to Dr. Woods. They both join me now. Guys, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us. Dr. Woods joins us by phone. Guys, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
All right. So the brochure says right there on the screen, I'll show it to you. I don't think they put the full thing on here. Christians stand against forced displacement and false doctrines. Now, that's kind of ironic because, again, that's what I think you call psychological projection, because they're about to put out a bunch of false doctrines. Christians, really, so-called Christians, I'd like to know, what do you mean by Christian? Be careful, folks. Always ask, what do you mean by that? Christians stand against forced displacement and false doctrines. We, the undersigned, have dedicated ourselves to defending the Bible from false interpretations, most especially from those calling for the persecution, exploitation, and elimination of an entire people group. Now that's, again, ironic. Logan, can you put the picture up with a guy wearing the T-shirt from the Palestinian, from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free? Nope. There was a guy, in the video, he's wearing a black shirt with white writing. There we go, right there. From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. Now, who then is calling for the persecution, exploitation, and elimination of an entire race of people? As they say, that's what, I guess, some are doing to Israel. But to me, Dr. Woods, isn't that what he's saying? The elimination of a whole group of people by that saying, Dr. Woods?
Yeah, it's just a matter of figuring out what sea he's talking about, Mediterranean, and what river he's talking about, the Jordan. And so when he says from the river to the sea, the land of Palestine, mislabeled, by the way, it's the land of Israel, but the land of Palestine shall be free, he's talking about the eradication of the Hebrew population in between those two geographical markers. So there are, I don't know how many million Jews living there now, and he's saying, let's just get rid of them.
And yet this group is accusing, I guess, the Zionists, as you're about to find out, which there are two types of Zionists. There are Zionists, means those who believe the Jews have a historical right to the land. And then there are Christian Zionists, which are people who believe they have a historical right to the land and a biblical right to the land. And they go on to trash the Zionists. So, Annie, apparently the Zionists are for the persecution, exploitation, elimination of an entire people group. I don't know about that. And yet, their guys that gave me the brochures, the one wearing the From the River to the Sea, which is about, I think, getting rid of a whole group of people. The hypocrisy.
Yes. And here's another hypocrisy. I believe, if I can pronounce it correctly, the Christians are standing against false doctrination or doctrine and defending Bible. I actually quickly pulled this verse of Quran up. It's chapter 3, verse 52, and it says, "But when Jesus felt persistence in disbelievers, he said, 'Who are my helpers for the cause of Allah?' And the disbelievers said, 'We are the helpers of Allah. We believe in Allah, so bear witness that we are Muslims. As to Jesus was the messenger of Allah in Islam.'" How are they exactly making sure that biblical verses aren't being manipulated by false doctrine? From Quran itself, chapter 3, verse 52. Calling Jesus the prophet of Islam, and many other chapters and verses where it says, do not say the three, do not believe in Trinity. Christians are unbelievers because they believe Jesus is Son of God. All of that plus this. So it's hypocrisy from the flyer to the T-shirts to the little, I think it's pieces of bread they're holding in their hand, correct?
Yeah.
So all of that. But what do I know? I'm just an Islamophobe.
Let's go back to that guy's T-shirt you're just showing. His T-shirt said free, what was that dude's name again? Mohammed Khalil or whatever his name was?
Mohammed Khalil, yes.
Yeah, remind our audience who that is.
Sorry, Mahmoud Khalid. He's the pro-Palestinian, anti-American, anti-Semite who was arrested while leading protests in, I want to say, Columbus University or Columbia University.
Columbia.
Columbia University. He was arrested, and I believe they're working toward actually deporting him. He's a terrorist, literally a terrorist, not just by mind and word. He chants all day long pro-Hamas. He's a big fan of Hamas, and he would like to see all Jews killed. And they want him freed back on the streets, and apparently give him his student visa back so he can go to school and poison more minds in America.
That lady's sign says, "Let the kids in Gaza eat." I think that's what it said, right?
Yes, let the kids
Let the kids in Gaza eat. Andy, is the Jewish state stopping the kids in Gaza from eating?
No. In fact, there's been a number of humanitarian efforts that the nation of Israel has done into Gaza, to prevent that very thing from happening. The only thing the nation of Israel is guilty of is going into Gaza and trying to root out terrorists, in Gaza, which is, technically within the land of Israel, as far as I'm concerned. That was something that the Israelis gave to the inhabitants of Gaza back in 2004, and they had, of course, as we all know, one and only one election in Gaza since that time. They elected Hamas, and ever since that point in time, that Gaza territory, southwest portion on the Israeli map, has been used as a beachhead to launch terrorist activity, wave after wave, culminating in the events of October the 7th into the land of Israel. So what are the Israelis supposed to do? Just let a terrorist cell grow up in their midst? No, they're trying to root out Hamas from Gaza, and they've gone out of their way, to make sure that innocent life is not taken in that process, right down to, it's very common for the Israeli government to send out leaflets, to drop leaflets so innocent bystanders are given notice to get out of the way, because here we come for the terrorists. So all this stuff about Israel is starving the inhabitants of Gaza, mistreating the inhabitants of Gaza, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, it's the Hamas within Gaza that's mistreating Israel.
I noticed one group on here is named the Cyrus Palestine Solidarity Network in Germany. I would think the Germans might want to be careful when it comes to their trashing on the Jews. I think they have a history that they might want to be mindful of, but they a lot, not condemning all folks in Germany, but it seems like Germany just never could root out that anti-Semitism over there. A lot of these groups want to have the word justice. Justice is all over these different groups that are behind this. I'll go back to the brochure so everybody can see it. But look at this on the brochure. Justice. The word justice is everywhere. But of course, these groups mean social justice, which is very interesting, Annie, because that is one of the pillars of Islam, is social justice, right, Annie?
Yes. However, it's a very important note. There's social justice for Muslims only. There's no social justice for non-Muslims. We need to put that in there. Which the picture you sent me of it, there's a part where it talks about diversity in Palestine. They have Muslims, they have Christians, they have Jews, and a few other. That's absolutely a lie. 100% a lie. You don't find Christian. You definitely don't find Jews in. I should say it's a lie because Palestine doesn't exist. But for sake of argument, we call it Palestine. There are no Jews in Palestine. There are no Christians in Palestine. They can't be. Why would they go there? So they can be killed? They travel, Hamas members travel from the other side of Gaza into Israel to kidnap Christian and Jews and take them over to rape them and torture them. Why would Christian and Jews voluntarily go into Palestine? Right there, that whole section is a lie. Well, the word Palestine in it is a lie. But the rest of the information is a lie.
In fact, I found page 2. Here's page 2. As followers of Jesus Christ, we have to dedicate ourselves to defending the Bible, really, from false interpretations. While they, of course, are doing that, most especially from those calling for the persecution, exploitation, elimination of the entire people group. We've already dealt with that, right? Then they go on, talk about Christian Zionism, as it is commonly known, is a heretical theology that encourages the violent uprooting of families and entire communities from the lands and properties on which they have lived, worked, and cultivated for generations. Now, I'm a Christian Zionist, but I have no desire to do that. But then again, if you're talking about uprooting terrorists, yeah, but here's the deal. How many Jews did the Israeli government kick out of Palestine, so-called Palestine, let's say the Gaza Strip? How many Jews did they kick out, Dr. Woods, and turn over the schools and the hospitals and the gardens and the nurseries, only to have it destroyed, and spending all the aid not on helping their people and feeding those Gazan children, but building concrete bunkers and tunnels, tons, millions and millions of dollars, maybe billions. Dr. Woods?
Well, it's just a matter of looking at a little bit of history and not ancient history. Just go back to 2004. It was the Israelis that voluntarily gave Gaza back to the inhabitants of Gaza. Now, that's not what a oppressive, genocidal power that Israel is being accused of. That's not how they behave. This is supposed to behave, I should say. This piece that you sent me is so filled with political propaganda. They talk here about thousands of years of Palestinian history and culture. Well, there's no such thing. Mark Twain visited that part of the world in 1867, wrote about it 2 years later in his book Innocents Abroad, 1869, and he says there's nothing here but a barren expanse. There's no thriving civilization or population here at all. So this thousands of years of Palestinian history and culture that Israel supposedly took away when they entered the land May the 14th in the War of Independence, 1948, that whole thing is a myth. And then right there in the middle column, top of the page, it talks about how Jesus was a Palestinian Jew. Well, there's no such thing. The name Palestine is not even invented until Emperor Hadrian of Rome invented the term in the 2nd century, long after Jesus left planet Earth through his ascension. So the idea that Jesus was somehow a Palestinian makes no historical sense either. So that's how you can recognize that this flyer that you were exposed to there in D.C. Is nothing but political propaganda, because it just contains one historical mistake after another.
Mm-hmm. And yet, sadly, Dr. Woods, Annie, I'll let you respond to this, Annie, most Americans, and dare I say most Christians, I'm talking about real Christians, I'm not just cultural Christians, real Christians, could not read this propaganda piece and refute any of it. How sad is that, Annie?
That is very true. Before I respond to that, if I could add something to what Dr. Woods just said. Again, taking it back to the ideology. If you read the Quran, there are 0 times, none, where word Palestine or Palestine, Palestinian or Palestinians have been mentioned. However,
just stop right there for a second. 1 second. For those who want to know, why does she keep pronouncing the word differently? Because the Roman emperor that Hadrian, Dr. Woods referenced, said, let's call it Philistine, after the arch enemy of the Jews, the Philistines. Remember David and Goliath? And that became, under Yasser Arafat, Palestine. So if you're wondering why she keeps reciting the name differently, it's because different pronunciations, Palestine or Philistine. Right, Annie?
Correct. And inside Middle East, they, even here, Rashida Tlaib, when talking to her people, she says, I'm from Palestine. She doesn't say Palestine. The Palestine pronunciation was the westernized propaganda to avoid the knowledge for average people to know what they're referring to. But they themselves say Palestine.
Because the Philistinians, or those who are, Philistines, they don't exist anymore. Rashida Tlaib's DNA does not make her a Philistine. She's not.
Nope.
The Palestinians, so-called, do not have the same DNA. That group of the Philistines, they're gone. They don't exist anymore.
Yes, but their ideology does, which is hatred for Jews, the enemies of Jews.
So anyway, I interrupted you just so people would know why you were bouncing between those two pronunciations. But
yes.
Keep going, please.
0 time. Either the land known as Palestine or Palestine, or people known as Palestinians or Palestinian. But then when you look at the Quran, just the people, Jews, as name of Jews, Israelis, is repeated 40 times in the Quran. The land of Israel by itself as a land, as a nation, is mentioned more than 80 times in the Quran. So you tell me which one existed for how long? Within their own ideology, within their own fight, within their own cause of Allah. How come Allah never mentioned you, but made sure to mention Jews and Israelis 40 times within Quran, referring to them as, O Bani Israel, O sons of Israel, being Jews.
Then it says, we stand in fellowship with the Palestinian Christian community of the Holy Land, and we honor their witness when they warn us that the world's oldest continuous Christian community is in danger of extinction. Dr. Woods?
Well, I mean, that's why I quoted Mark Twain. I mean, this thousands of years of Palestinian history and culture, you know, it's non-existent. It's a propaganda piece. I mean, basically, Yasser Arafat, who's well known, you know, was well known with the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, basically went to the Soviets for schooling. And he figured out he could not beat the Jews militarily after getting shellacked 1948, 1967, 1973. And it was the Soviets that taught him the art of propaganda, basically that you have to convince the world that Israel is the oppressor and took someone else's land. And so that's where this term Palestine that he grabbed from Emperor Hadrian back in the 2nd century, you know, was brought back to life. And so if you repeat a lie long enough, people will believe it. You watch TV, cable, MSNBC, CNN, and they say this over and over again, that Israel is illegally occupying someone else's land, took the land away from the Palestinians, and the whole thing is false. There's no such thing as Palestinians, and if you go back to the San Remo Accords post-World War I,
Yes.
it's very clear that Israel has a legal right to that territory. I mean, the best of the legal scholars have examined that and explored that. And so I find myself today as a political Zionist. I believe that the nation of Israel has a right legally to be where they are, and they have a biblical right. God gave that land to the nation of Israel. They're not occupying anything. You know, you can't occupy something you own. I mean, I'm sitting here in my house, in my living room, and I'm not occupying my living room because I own the house. I mean, that's basically what Israel is doing. She is living in a place where she biblically and legally belongs, and the other side doesn't like that. And so because of the propaganda efforts by Yasser Arafat, by the way, Yasser Arafat was not a Palestinian, he was Egyptian. So that shows you again that this whole thing is made up. He got it from the Soviets in terms of propaganda, and it's just a way to convince the world that Israel took someone else's land. And that's how you have to beat them. The Soviets taught Arafat, because you can't beat these people militarily, as 1948, 1967, and 1973 amply demonstrated.
And then, of course, you have look at this, folks. Dear Lord Rothschild, November 2nd, 1917, the Balfour Declaration. They started working on that in 1917. I think we had a further completion in 1926. The San Remo Conference. What year was that, Dr. Woods?
Oh, I want to say 1920 to 1922, right in there.
And this was the British government and a bunch of international community groups agreeing this is the home of the Jews, right?
Yeah, it was the post-World War I allies trying to fix the situation over there, and part of it was giving homeland to the Jewish people, and that's what the San Remo Accords was. That's what was agreed upon at a hotel in San Remo, Italy, by the World War I powers. Mm-hmm. And so when Israel came into the land in 1948, they weren't doing anything illegal. And even in 1947, okay, the United Nations, again, partitioned a big section of that land. In fact, Israel is only today on a small fraction of what they were given, a section of land for the Jews. So, this is a bit of history that is ignored because it goes against the Yasser Arafat narrative that wants to convince the world that Israel is occupying. So every time you hear the word occupation or illegal occupation, I don't know what to say about it other than it's just a big fat lie, and people believe it because it's repeated ad nauseum.
Well, you go back to the brochure. We affirm the Palestinian people's inalienable right affirmed by theology, history, and international law.
Lie.
Lie, because we just mentioned two historical documents showing the international community said, starting back in the 1917s, 1917, during that period of World War I, after that, no, I'm sorry, here is where we're going to establish a homeland for the Jews, historically.
Well, they're probably going off of recent rulings from the International Criminal Court and the ICC and the ICJ, all arms of the United Nations. But those are very recent rulings, and those are political rulings. They have nothing to do with the legal situation. You know, San Remo and 1947 partition were legal rulings, okay? Some court can say whatever it wants to today, but it's just expressing its own political perspective and is not dealing with the sources of law that give Israel a right to be in that land.
Comment on this, Annie? We move to another topic?
I keep doubling down on what Dr. Woods is saying. Yasser Arafat not being Palestinian, since nobody is. Also, we briefly touched on Mahmoud Khalil. I want to make sure your audience are aware. He's not Palestinian either. He's not. He was born in Syria to a supposedly Palestinian parents whose mom comes from Algeria, dad comes from Lebanon. Again, proof that they don't exist. They just don't exist. But again, repeated lie, big enough? Repeat a big lie over and over and becomes the truth. Bottom line is, I appreciate all the evidence that's out there, but bottom line, root of it is, there is no such a place as Palestine. There is no such a people as Palestinians. We touched on it on your show last time. Same thing with Pakistanis. Pakistan was a land that was made for Muslim Indians. So anybody who's like Pakistanis or Pakistanis, this and that, they're basically Indians. There is no such a race as Pakistanis. Same thing with Palestinians. And I'm pretty sure if it did, there are many of these races that don't exist. But apparently Jews themselves are worried about Palestinians more than they're worried about their whole heritage and history. And not to sidetrack the discussion, but 99.9% of us Iranians anywhere in the world are literally panicking over President Trump's entertaining the idea of renaming Persian Gulf, because it's our culture, it's our heritage, it's our history of 2,800 years. But how is it that some Jewish people are willing to hand it all over to a bunch of non-existing people? I don't know. That's beyond me.
What does he want to name the Persian Gulf, Annie?
He is making a visit this week to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. And Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia and Qatar have all requested for him to think about officially renaming Persian Gulf to Arab Gulf. And his latest statement is, I have to have a decision by then, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Now, my Substack actually tomorrow will be covering this. We're hoping, well, he should have never entertained it anyways. He should have said, I'm United States of America's president. It's not within my responsibility to rename the entire map of the world, but I think he's willing to entertain that, possibly, to rename Persian Gulf to Arab Gulf.
All right.
I mean, the very last pieces of Persia left that Muslim Arabs haven't taken away. Hopefully, President Trump's not going to be one of the names that is signing off on the last pieces to be taken.
I would think the prince from Iran, who's now exiled to Washington, D.C., would have at least reached out to him about this, right?
He did. The Prince Pahlavi has reached out to him 4 times since January 20th, from requesting a sit down to requesting a no negotiation to requesting a not making Oman the center of these negotiations, and to reach out to say, don't touch the name of that Gulf. But President Trump seemed to be very much ignoring the existence of Prince Pahlavi at the moment.
Let's switch to Texas. Look at this. Dr. Woods just giggled if you guys did hear that. Let's go to Annie's Substack. The Constitution versus Sharia. One must fall. Why American freedom can't coexist with Islamic supremacy. Pick it up here. Tell me what you're talking about, because it fits with what's going on in Texas. And I got big news for you guys that I'm about to break right here related to Texas. I don't think you know this, Annie, but go ahead.
Sure. So this Substack came out today. I want to say I spent a good 6 to 8 weeks on it to gather the information. It is a very long piece, about 22 pages. But finally, I decided to break down what me, you, and everybody else talk about when we say there is no coexisting, Sharia goes against Constitution. The first two sections are, of course, available. I will say that you need to be a paid subscriber to read the rest of the remaining 5 pieces. But it's basically breaking it down with evidence from our own Constitution, different amendments and different articles, compared side by side to words of these 3 books I always have on my table: Quran, Hadith, and Reliance of the Traveler, which is the Sharia book. So I pretty much taking, of course, not the entire Constitution or the Quran, because that would have been probably a full book, but the top priority rights that we have here, freedoms we have here, that is completely against Sharia or vice versa. Making the point for comments, I actually got a comment on my page on Facebook today saying this will never happen in America. And I shook my head. I'm like, really? Have you heard of Epic City? Epic City 2.0? Have you heard of Michigan, Dearborn, Minnesota? Any of them? No. So the goal is to hopefully, as you said, people can look at this pamphlet and not see the propaganda because they don't have the knowledge to see the propaganda. I'm hoping with this one as the first one, and it will be followed with more, people can take a minute, read something, and actually have the knowledge to say, oh, wait, so this is why we're not going to end up friends as, United States of America. It's going to be either, the Islamic Republic of America or United States of America. It cannot be both.
Dr. Woods, you're in Texas. This whole 402-acre compound, your governor, who has been talking about it finally, but I don't believe anything he says. I think he's just full of tweets. Maybe actually the Attorney General, I think he's working on something. I trust him far more, and he's running against Rhino Cornyn of Texas for the U.S. Senate. We have someone that we sent in to investigate the mosque on that compound. And we're going to reveal to you on Wednesday night the individual we sent in, and we're going to reveal to you what that mosque is teaching on Wednesday night. If you had to guess, Annie, what do you think that mosque is teaching there in Plano?
Do I get multiple options or just one?
No, you can all
they start their sermon by death to America, death to Israel. And then after that chant is over, they're probably going to moving on to Sharia is superior to all man-made laws, including the land you live in. If any of the laws goes against Allah's words, you will not follow it, and you will put Sharia above all.
So that jihad and child brides, right?
Jihad, child brides, female genital mutilation, Islam, wherever you find them being non-believers. Anyone walks from Allah, becoming an ex-Muslim, shall be killed. You can have up to 4 wives, and those your right hand possesses. Rape the non-believer woman out there because you have conquered the land, therefore they are your right. All of that is Sharia. Again, that article actually breaks all of that down, word by word, including all sort of jihad. Because remember, there are 4 different types of jihad. Jihad, blowing yourself up and screaming Allah Akbar, isn't the only form. And no, none of those 4 are the inner struggle to make it on time to the gym and keep your diet. That is not jihad. There are 4 different types of jihad that everybody's applying in America today. And by everybody, I mean every Sharia-obeying Muslim.
And Dr. Woods, we will have this individual on the broadcast Wednesday night. We paid him to go there. We covered his expenses to go there. He spent several days taking a lot of pictures, studying their library, their books, doing lots of interviews. And it's exactly what we thought. There's more than enough here for your governor, your impotent governor, to do something. Do the people of Texas like your governor, or do they realize that he's not worth a pitcher of warm spit like I do?
Well, I don't detect any, strong hostile feelings, towards him. I mean, I don't know how much people are following every little thing that he does, kind of like you've been doing, but I just don't see a lot of hostility towards the man.
So in other words, most people in Texas aren't aware that the guy is basically impotent. He's good at tweeting and talking, but he's not a doer.
Well, the further you get up the political chain, when you start talking to political people, you get more of the perspective you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But your average Texan, I don't think really thinks in those terms.
Yeah, which is why Texas is in trouble. So I know they like to wave their flags, don't tread on me, and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the average Texan, like the average person in Tennessee and everywhere else, is completely oblivious to what's really going on. The average person. Would you agree with that, Annie?
I would agree with that, yes. Again, a lot of anywhere in America, not just Texas, anywhere in America, most Americans, first of all, they don't see mosques as a threat. Hey, we have our churches. They have their mosques. They still don't understand a mosque isn't a place of worship at all. Again, if they would have studied the Quran, they would realize nowhere in the Quran does it say go to a mosque to do your prayer. It doesn't exist. It's not required. It's not required. The mosque is a very different concept, but Americans don't see it. Remember, we still have Americans who thinks interfaith dialogue was a brilliant idea and we should start respecting each other and coexist between Chrislam.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Woods, what do you think is going to happen in your state? I mean, you're the one that had right there your city hall in Sugar Land, Texas, outside of Houston. They just turned it over to the Muslims to get down on the ground and stick their rear ends up in the air. And yet I'm not sure they would rent to us. I don't know. Maybe they would. But we're not calling for Sharia, Islamic law, that's in direct violation of your state constitution and our U.S. Constitution. What do you think is going to happen to your state? Because I think personally, the barn door's open and the horse is out. And by the way, you do know the DOJ, thankfully, Trump's DOJ is supposedly going to investigate this group. Did you know Dr. Woods?
I did. Yeah, I did see something on that. But I'll say this much. I believe that Texas has been intentionally targeted.
Yes.
It's just a very simple mathematical reason. I mean, if you can flip Texas from red to, I don't know, turquoise or something like that, then you'll never, ever see a Republican president again because of the amount of votes that Texas has in the Electoral College, for presidential elections. So I don't think it's, and I also think they believe that if they can flip, red Texas, boy, what could they do to Massachusetts or, New Jersey or whatever. So I believe that people need to be in prayer for Texas. People need to pray for Texas all the way around because I think our state has been targeted for these very reasons.
I think so too. Let me go to this real quick, Annie. Heard another Substack. The suit doesn't erase the sword. West keeps falling for the oldest Islamic trick in the book. Isn't that the truth? Annie, tell me what that's about.
Sure. So I believe last Wednesday or Thursday, I always mispronounce his name, Macron, I think.
Yeah, Emmanuel Macron,
invited the very new, elegant, suit-wearing jihadi leader of Syria to France, put a red carpet down for him, shook his hand, sat down, which I should say again, sorry to break it to everybody in America, he was following President Trump's footsteps of sending 2 Republican House members to Syria to make Syria great again. This happened a week before that. And now Wednesday, in 2 days, England is having him in England for a sit down. And I feel very exhausted and I feel like a broken record when I say putting a suit on a jihadi. And this guy is a jihadi. I'm not even making this up. Look him up. He's been part of Islamic Jihad from day one. I think he got involved when he was 16 or 15 to this day. They just, trim the beard, brush the hair, put a suit on him, teach him how to shake somebody's hand. And now he's representing Syria and he's the good guy and we're going to help him make Syria great again. So that's why I saw the need to put out a Substack telling people, not that politicians are going to do anything about it, but people might start to learn just because he looks like care members doesn't mean he's a good guy.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Dr. Woods, Annie is Live Up to Freedom, liveuptofreedom.com, liveuptofreedom.com. Dr. Woods, before we go, give our audience a challenge, and just on a positive note, maybe an affirmation of some kind as a pastor, as an attorney, as a Texan, as an American, as a patriot.
Well, I mean, there's several directions I could go with that. I would encourage people to be involved, and not just national issues, but local issues. I mean, we had a guy running for mayor of this city, Sugar Land, and fortunately he was Muslim. Unfortunately, and fortunately he was just defeated in the runoff. Not the runoff, the primary leading to the runoff. Now we've got two people that we get a chance to vote for June 7th, and neither of them is a Muslim. The Muslim was eliminated, is the point I'm trying to make. So my point is people can make a huge difference just by paying attention to local politics. Don't just focus on national issues, focus on local issues. All politics is local. And if you're upset with the incursion of Islam into the state of Texas or any other state, defeat these people the way our Constitution allows them to be defeated at the ballot box. Don't let them win city council. Don't let them win the mayor slot. And don't let them win certainly the school board positions, because they're just going to bring their Islamic doctrine with them. And we can stop the whole thing just by being engaged and aware of, local issues and who's running, etc. So I guess as a word of exhortation, that's what I would encourage people to do.
AndyWoodsMinistries.org, AndyWoodsMinistries.org. And he's on each and every Saturday and Sunday. What time, Logan? Noon? Huh? Noon Central, Saturday and Sundays. Annie, when are you on the network?
Whenever you want me to be on the network.
You don't have a regular show? You don't have a regular show we're taping with you?
No, but last time we talked, as soon as I start the writing parts on your website, then we were going to talk and see what you have open for me to squeeze in my show.
Excellent. Logan, let's get on that. Guys, thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be here.